Chapter 11, Athens. When eighth grade ended, I was a little uneasy about starting high school in the fall. It was a bigger school. I would have to make new friends and get used to new teachers. I tried to keep busy and distract myself from the feeling of butterflies in my stomach. Luckily, keeping busy was fairly easy to do. Racing had become more than a weekend activity. I had been competing in state and regional events with the Bennett Blazers and had already set U.S. records for my age group in shot put, javelin, discus, and wheelchair racing. I had dreamt that one day maybe I could compete in the Olympics. I had heard about the Paralympics, which is part of the Olympics and specifically created for people with disabilities. So it was a funny thing when after practice one day, Mr. Hughes, one of the field coaches, came over and asked me about my plans for the summer. Have you ever thought about racing in the Paralympics? Yes, someday. I hope so, I replied. No, I mean in the Athens Paralympics, this coming September. I was speechless. Was I ready to race in a worldwide competition that millions of people watch? I had just turned 15. I wasn't even in high school yet. I think you've got a good chance of qualifying for the U.S. team, he said. He explained that if I wanted to be considered, I would have to send in the application form in 2 days. If you get accepted, you'll get invited to race in the trials out of California to see if you qualify for the games. The trials are only a few weeks away, he said in a tone of urgency. This is out sightseeing at the Acropolis in Athens. It shouldn't be difficult to get all the proper paperwork ready, he added. Let me get you the forms, and you go talk to your mom. It was Saturday, and the deadline was only 2 days away. It was already June, and the games were a little over 2 months away. Wait, sorry, I read that twice. Was it even possible? I ran off to find Mom. Mom was a little skeptical, but as usual, she wanted to support me in whatever I set my mind to. Had I said I was starting a rock band, I am sure she would have bought me a set of drums. It was more of her you can do anything way of thinking. What are the Paralympics? The Paralympic Games are a major international multi-sport event for athletes with physical disabilities, including muscular dystrophy, spina bifida, and vision impairment. The Games have grown from a small gathering of British World War II veterans in 1948 to one of the largest international sporting events today. Both the Winter and Summer Paralympic Games are organized in parallel with the Olympic Games, starting with the 1988 Summer Games in Seoul, South Korea. They have been held almost immediately after the respective Olympic Games. What do we have to do? She asked. I explained to her about the application and Monday's deadline. The application needed to get the signature of a track official who could validate my fastest race times. We spent the rest of that weekend completing the forms. It was too late to send the letter by mail, so Mom faxed it to the Olympic headquarters in Colorado Springs on Monday morning. Now all I could do was to wait and cross my fingers. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived from the Olympic Committee. My heart pounded as I opened the letter nervously and read, Dear Tatyana, this letter is to inform you that you have qualified to attend the trials for the U.S. Paralympics team to possibly compete in the 2004 Paralympic Games in Athens, Greece. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My mind was spinning. Tatyana, this says the trials are in 2 weeks, Mom said as she skimmed over the letter. There's so much to do. I don't know, she added hesitantly. And it's in California. By the time I was aware of what she was saying, Mom was already on her computer looking for airfares to the West Coast. 2 weeks later, Mom and I were at the racetrack at the Spartan Stadium in San Jose, California. The other racers were gathering and the time trials were beginning. It's great you were able to come out and learn about the Paralympics, one of the older athletes said with a smile. I didn't think she meant to sound dismissive or condescending as she did, but after a few more greetings like this from the other athletes, I was losing my confidence. After all, I was only 15. Most of the athletes were in their 20s and 30s, and had been working with professional coaches for years. Even my own mother viewed my going to the trials as a good experience, more than actually a chance to qualify for the game in Athens. Mom, what am I going to do? My voice was shaking. I usually didn't get this nervous before competitions. Just do the best you can, she said reassuringly. I told myself that if I didn't race well, we'd go home. And in 4 years, I could try out again. At least I wouldn't be the newbie on the track then. Based on the track times from the track meets back home, I had qualified to race in the trials for the 100, 200, 400, and 800 meter sprints. The 100 and 200 meters were short sprints and were all about upper body strength. They were my best chance to qualify. I knew I was fast out of the starting gates. I hoped I was fast enough to keep up with the other racers. The 400 and 800 meter racers would be harder. It takes a lot of endurance to keep up that speed for those longer distances. Mom, I looked at my mother with more than a little fear and apprehension. Sweetie, just run fast. Runners ready on the course, the announcer said. I headed onto the track and started to relax. Here on the track, I was in my element. The other racers weren't staring at me anymore. Everyone focused on the race. Runners, on your mark. Crack went the starting gun. I sprang out of the gate, pushing on the wheels as fast as I could as we raced down the straightaway. Yasama, Yasama, I repeated again and again. I was aware of the other racers on either side of me. I was keeping up, but it was going to be close. I couldn't tell if anyone was in the lead. Everything was moving so fast. I can do it, I can do it. Almost to the finish line, I put on extra burst of speed and crossed ahead of the others. The other racers gasped for air, exhausted and sinking back into their chairs. I was tired too, but exhilarated from my first race. On the scoreboard above the track, the names of the winners came up. First place, Tatyana McFadden. Everyone looked at me with a mix of shock and surprise. I had won. I was going to Athens. The most amazing thing I remember about the Athens Games was the number of athletes participating. 4,000 competitors from all over the world, all with disabilities. It was thrilling to see so many people like me running, jumping, swimming, throwing. At the opening ceremony, I paraded into the stadium with the U.S. team and teams from 135 other countries. There were thousands of people above us in the stadium, cheering and flashing cameras. I was ecstatic. It was wonderful to be representing my adopted country, America. The president of the International Paralympic Committee began to speak. You set standards and give expression for many people around the world, he declared. The words echoed over the loudspeakers and filled my head. I had never thought much about setting standards for anyone else. I could barely clean my room, much less set standards for myself. I competed in sports events because I loved doing it. But in that moment, surrounded by so many incredible athletes, being cheered by the thousands of fans, I felt something new grow inside me. As corny as it might sound, in that moment, I experienced a new desire to make a difference. I realized that through my actions, I could inspire and help others. I wasn't quite sure exactly how I might do it, but something special had happened in the opening ceremonies. I had qualified to race in the 100, 200, 400, and 800 meter races. My first race was the 100 meter, which was my strongest event. I knew if there was any hope of me winning a medal, it was in this race. I was all nerves waiting for it to start. When my family and friends heard I was competing in the Paralympics, they all decided to come to Athens. We know you can do it. Remember, Tatyana, we'll all be there cheering you on, my Grandma Jo said enthusiastically. How will I know where you are, Grandma? I asked. Don't worry. We'll get to the stadium early and get good seats. We'll all be wearing white t-shirts. Look for the banner. They had made t-shirts that read, Go, Tatyana, go, for everyone, and a big banner with my name on it. 11 women, including myself, had qualified to compete in the 100-meter race. So 2 preliminary races, or heats, would determine the top 6 racers to race in the finals. I was in the first heat with 6 of the competitors. The other racers all looked so much older than me. I tried to focus on my breathing as I settled into position in my racing chair. On your mark, crack went the starting gun. We were off. I bounded off the starting line. I quickly took the lead and crossed the finish line in 16.71 seconds. I won the first heat. I was a clear half second ahead of the next racer. As I caught my breath, I watched the remaining 5 racers line up for the second heat. Chantal Petitclerc, one of Canada's top wheelchair racers, won the heat in 16.45 seconds. I had earned a place in the finals, but I knew that to win, I needed to at least beat her time. The next day, I was feeling confident but nervous. On the track, getting into position, I glanced at Chantal. Runners, on your mark. Crack! Chantal pulled out quickly, with me following closely behind her. I knew I could do it. Just a fraction of a second difference. Down to the finish. I could see it. Now push, Yasama. I thrust my arms on the wheels of my chair, harder and faster. But at the same moment, Chantal gave it her last thrust. I was just beside her. It would be close. In first place, Chantal Petitclerc. In second place, Tatyana McFadden. Second place. I had won second place. Chantal had won the gold, but I had won a silver medal in the Paralympics. I was so excited. Not bad for a 15-year-old. I was the youngest member of the U.S. Paralympic track and field team that year, and I came home with the silver medal for the 100-meter run and a bronze medal for the 200-meter race. High school had already started by the time I returned home from Athens. When I arrived for my first day of high school, the marquee in front of the school read, "Congratulations, Tatyana McFadden." A week later, a letter addressed to me arrived from the White House. The President of the United States had written to congratulate me. Then the local newspaper called to request an interview. And to top it all off, I was invited to ride in my high school homecoming parade. What a great way to start the school year. Me and Chantal in a celebratory hug.